Hello, we're sitting here with Miriam and Aaron, and we're about to start our initial session. Hi, Miriam and Aaron, say hello.
Hi, Freddie.
Hi, Freddie.
Hi, and welcome to this session. Before we get started, I just want to bring your minds back to the informed consent that you originally signed. One of the key things is just remembering that this is a clinical simulation and is not in any way an actual therapy session. And, though I might ask questions, these are just used for the purpose of this video to kind of highlight, some of my skills, I suppose. So, Miriam and Aaron, welcome. And what brings you to therapy today?
We were going to talk about family issues.
Mm-hmm.
And issues with Mom.
Okay.
Yeah, dealing with her aging process and how to, as she gets more and more needy, how do we deal with that as a couple?
Okay. All right. What's your relationship like with your mother?
Well, that's a loaded question. Well, sometimes most of the time we're okay with each other. I help her out a lot. Sometimes we fight, but it's never anything that lasts too long. She's pretty demanding, but she also feels that she needs to be heard, and I sometimes get impatient with her, and she gets impatient with me, and then we're fine. At the end of the day, we always love each other, and we always hug each other, and yeah, I just have to help her out a lot these days.
Mm-hmm. And Aaron, what's your relationship like with her?
My relationship with her is similar, where we do get into some fights every now and then, and but at the end of the day, I'm supportive, and I do whatever I can to take care of her and support Miriam. And a long time ago, whenever she and Miriam fought and I defended Miriam, I got into trouble with both Miriam and with my mother-in-law. So I decided to lay low, and now I stay out of it most of the time. I'm just there in a supporting role.
Okay. All right. All right. Do you have children?
Yes.
Two beautiful children.
Oh.
Yeah.
How would you describe them?
You want to go first?
Danny is a soon-to-be 13-year-old, very witty, funny, smart, energetic, athletic, and precocious young lady.
Mm-hmm.
And Sammy is a sweet, soon-to-be 11-year-old boy. He's extremely sweet. He's athletic. He works hard at things he loves to do, and doesn't work hard at things he doesn't love to do.
Things he doesn't love to do.
There you go.
He's very thoughtful and giving and caring and empathetic.
Yeah, he's a really good guy.
Mm-hmm. And Aaron, what would you say is your relationship with your children? How does that look?
I think it's a very good relationship.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Miriam, how would you describe it?
Very loving, supportive, and Sammy will never hesitate to give me a hug, and neither will Danny. And Danny and I are at the point now in our relationship where she's opening up to me and talking to me about things going on with her friends and at dance. I feel like I've become a good confidant for her.
Mm-hmm.
And Sammy, he opens up less about relationships, but he's still young and he's a guy. So, but he's very sweet and cuddly and loving with me.
Okay. All right. And are there any other family members that are part of this family unit that you see often?
2 dogs and 2 cats.
And you?
Me. I
Yes.
see. All right. I understand your father, Aaron, is a person that's part of the family unit.
Yes, he lives about 5 or 6 miles away, and we see him typically 2 to 3 times a week.
Hmm. And what's that relationship like?
It's a good relationship. My dad and I get along very well. We have very different political views,
Seriously.
and we fight about them frequently, but it's always a relatively respectful fight. It's more of a arguments, disagreements rather than a fight. It's never actual fight.
I see. Okay. All right. And what's your relationship like with him?
It's very sweet and supportive. As long as we don't talk about politics, we're really good.
Mm-hmm.
He would obviously like the kids to do more religious stuff, going to synagogue and studying more. And
Mm-hmm.
I push back a little bit because the kids have other activities and sometimes they need a little break. But other than that, our relationship is really good, and he's here on a dime if we ever need him, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Sounds very close.
It is.
And from what I'm hearing, it sounds like you have a very close family.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we all get along really well, even the dogs and cats.
So I want to go back to your mother. What's the relationship like with her? And we'll start with Sammy.
Oh, she adores him. She always asks for him. It's not like it's funny, they don't really have conversations, but there's lots of affection there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she adores him.
Yeah.
And he adores her too. He's really on her about how she walks to make sure that she walks correctly. He he clocks her on when she has a habit of walking incorrectly and putting her elbows on her walkers, and he'll go very sweetly and put her hand on her walker instead of her elbow. So he looks out for her too.
It's very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he reminds her of anybody?
Yeah, he reminds her of you.
Really? How's that?
Yeah, just you look a lot alike when you were little. She often calls him Freddie. Often.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes she sees him as her little boy.
Hmm. So she might be experiencing some transference with Sammy.
A little bit.
And you understand what transference is?
I can guess.
Yeah.
That's basically when you're in a relationship with somebody and you project something onto them. It's commonly something seen in therapy where maybe, like I might remind you of somebody, and you might treat me a certain way based on that. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then what's her relationship like with Danny?
Well, it's good. I mean, they sit and they actually talk a lot. She does ask for Sammy a lot more, but when her and Danny are together, they will have conversations together. They like to sometimes play board games together.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because it's more interactive than Sammy, but she has a seemingly more affection for Sammy. I mean, she asks for him more.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're in a show together, Danny will be like in 10 dances, and Sammy will be in one dance, and she'll say, "Oh, Sammy, you're so great." Danny's like, "Wait, what? What's going on there?"
Danny had her bat mitzvah in December, and we purposely did not have Sammy participate in any way because we just didn't want him to upstage her with the family, because we know that probably Josie and her siblings would probably rave about Sammy and not give as much praise to Danny.
See. So it sounds like there's other family members who treat Sammy in a similar way.
Yes,
Well, I think it's
her brother and her
the
sisters.
boy thing.
It's a boy thing.
It's a boy thing.
Very possible, yeah.
Yeah.
So Miriam, what was it like for you growing up in terms of your relationship with your mother and maybe your brother's relationship with your mother and mine, I suppose?
Well, I mean, for the most part, because I was the only girl, lots of times I was doted on.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and I know that you and Danny always looked out for me. And then, but on the other hand, I was expected to do a lot more, I felt, when it came to housework or chores or, and this was more my teenage years, nothing when I was little, but when in my teenage years I was just a lot more was expected of me, and more differences came up as I got older, not when I was younger. When I was younger, I was a princess.
In the way that you described your mother's relationship with Sammy, do you think that she had a similar relationship with either of her sons?
Probably Danny more than Freddie. I felt like she really favored Danny a lot, especially, again, I saw more of this as we got older, not when we were younger. When we were younger, maybe because I was the youngest, I couldn't distinguish any difference between any of us.
Mm-hmm.
Just that we were different and we had different interactions with her. When we got older, it always seemed like Danny was the hero, and you and I were like, whatever, we left her like a dog in hell at home. And Danny, he would be like in New York, and he was the prince, and he would come home and, do his grocery shopping in her pantry, and she's perfectly fine with that.
I see.
But with me, she wouldn't even call me when I lived in New York. So
she treated you differently.
When I was older, not when I was younger.
Okay. Well, Aaron and Miriam, thank you for taking the time to do this initial interview. The next step, I'm going to take this information and put together what's called a genogram, which will kind of show the family in sort of a family tree light, and we could take a look at some of the different types of relationships, and with a goal of looking at if there's any particular behaviors we want to take a look at in how either of you might approach your mother, and see if we could work on perhaps some new methods to better cope with her as she's getting older and becoming a little bit difficult, is from what I'm hearing. And so, again, I'll remind you of the informed consent. Again, this was a simulation, and I thank both of you for participating in this activity.